Hello, Indianapolis Theological Seminary community. I want to take this brief video to just say a word about something I'm reading this fall. An alumnus and a local pastor and I are getting together once a month to discuss Christopher Watkin, Biblical Critical Theory. This is a book that came out a little over a year ago, and I've been very curious to read it. And so this particular alumnus and pastor and I, we decided, hey, let's dive in. It's a pretty big book, so we're committed for this fall. Critical theory is a real buzzword these days. You hear it a lot, but what does it mean? Watkin helpfully describes critical theory as a philosophical attempt to analyze and to critique culture or society. And so there are a lot of ways of doing critical theory, and that's usually what you hear. And so the question here is there a biblical way to analyze and to assess culture and society? So the subtitle is How the Bible's Unfolding Story Makes Sense of Modern Life and Culture. And to give you an example of just one of the things I've learned so far in this book is he talks about the way in our society things can become very polarized. You don't have to watch the news long or watch television or get on social media, and you realize there are groups really passionate about certain things and then other groups really passionate about the exact opposite, and they seem to be unable to communicate to each other. And what he points out is oftentimes these different groups actually have bits of truth in what they're expounding, what they're arguing for, but they can't seem to see the other side of the argument, and that other side also has bits of truth. And so he talks about the process of diagonalization. Diagonalization is when we understand that there's some people who are very passionate about mercy and others really passionate about truth. Well, why do we have to sacrifice mercy for truth or truth for mercy? Why can't we have them both? Or some insist on justice and others on love. Well, the Christian understanding is that God is fully just and fully loving. He always tells the truth, and he is merciful. So we don't feel the need to sacrifice any of these good instincts at the altar of the other. Nor do we want to go down some middle road and look for some middle area, some gray area in between, some mercy, some love, some truth, some justice. No, we want all these things in their entirety because the Bible insists on them. He does very well in quoting Chesterton here. I'm going to read a bit from G.K. Chesterton. He says, "We want not an amalgam or compromise, but both things at the top of their energy, love and wrath, both burning. I need not remind the reader that the idea of this combination is indeed central in Orthodox theology. For Orthodox theology has especially insisted that Christ was not a being apart from God and man, nor yet a being half human and half not, but both things at once and both things thoroughly, very God and very man." So right at the center of our theology, the person of Jesus Christ is not somewhat God and somewhat man in the middle, rather he's fully God and fully man. And there are a lot of things about God. He's transcendent and immanent. He is holy and forgiving. None of these things need to be sacrificed for the others. And so he argues that there's a way of understanding Christian doctrine in its entirety that can then be brought to bear on these cultural and social issues. So I'll just give you one example. We commonly hear of the sacred and the secular divide, or another way to put it is a war between science and religion. You can have a scientific view of the world, secular, or you can have a sacred view of the world, which is of course religious. And these two are at odds and cause a lot of the disputes in our culture when you come from one perspective or the other. But he helpfully demonstrates that verses like Genesis 1:28 diagonalize between the sacred and the secular, science and religion. What does Genesis 1:28 say? Genesis 1:28 is where God tells Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth, to have dominion, and to subdue it. So to have dominion and to subdue the earth means to understand it, to control it, to cultivate it for human thriving, for our cultural uses. Well, that's exactly what science is, an attempt to understand, categorize, and then use the good things of the secular world for human advancement. But Genesis 1:28 tells us to do this for the glory of God. And so therefore, all of the secular space and the scientific endeavors of the world in a biblical worldview are understood for the point of spreading the image and the glory of God throughout the earth. And so therefore, there is no secular sacred divide. There is no war between science and religion. Rather, the Bible teaches us that all things in the created world are actually sacred because they're made by the Creator God, who also commissions us to be fruitful, multiply, subdue, and fill the earth. That's just one example of where there's this polarization in our society that a biblical worldview can be brought to bear, and that's what Watkin is going after in this book. So if you're looking for something to read this fall, it's a big book, but as I said, we're committed to it. We're reading 100 pages a month. We're going to be done by Christmas, so it's not too daunting. I recommend Christopher Watkin, Biblical Christian Critical Theory.